Hello everyone and welcome back to Coach Craig's Sports. Today we're going to be doing another draft grade episode. This one's going to be for the AFC East. So we're going to be going through each team in this division, going pick by pick, player by player, giving each pick a grade. And then I'll give an overall grade for each team. The individual picks, I will not have a plus or minus, but the overall grade may have a plus or minus if I felt one was warranted. If you guys haven't already checked out the past videos for the AFC North and the AFC South, be sure to do that as well. They are pretty good videos as well, but we're going to get started off with the Buffalo Bills here. First round pick that they had was Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, defensive end. This is a guy that a lot of people are talking about early on in the process being, that upper part of the first round. And, he fell all the way to 30 here, so pretty good value. They did need some pass rush help, so I did give this pick an A. Then they went back to the pass rush again in the second round with Carlos Basham, or Boogie Basham, however you want to call him, out of Wake Forest, defensive end as well. And, he's the guy that he tested a lot better than I thought he would. Bigger guy, can move inside a little bit too as well. I did give this pick an A as well. Like I said, pass rush is definitely a need for them. Now they do have these two guys as well as AJ Epineza out of Iowa from last year they took in the second round. But they're all kind of a little bit bigger guys. They are guys that can move down to the defensive tackle position on pass rushing down. So I think you can rotate these guys in and out and kind of have them play that role and hopefully get a good pass rush out of them, because that's really what they needed last year against the Chiefs. We saw what that did against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So the Bills weren't able to do that. So that should definitely help their defense out if some of these guys do end up panning out. Then in the third round, they went Spencer Brown, offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa. He's a guy that had a pretty decent Senior Bowl, tested crazy at his actual pro day. 6'8", real big guy. Still pretty raw, a guy that you're going to have to develop for a little while, but a guy that could be a very good starting tackle in the NFL, a couple years down the road. So I gave that pick an A as well. Their offensive line is fine for now. It could be a little bit better, but looking towards the future, you got a very good developmental offensive tackle prospect at the end of the third round. I consider that a high win. Then in the fifth round, they went Tommy Doyle, kind of another developmental offensive line prospect. He played tackle in college. I think he probably ends up playing guard in the NFL, or kind of, just a rotational guy behind some of these starting offensive linemen. So good depth piece, if nothing else. A guy that you can hopefully develop a little bit as well. I gave that pick a B as well. So, really address that offensive line. Then they went with Marquise Stevenson, Speedy Stevenson out of Houston. A really quick guy, even though his 40 time didn't really show it. But if you guys watched the combine, let's see, what was it? The House of Champs combine that Brandon Marshall put on. He ran the 40-yard dash, I believe, 3 different times. And he had not perfect form on any of them, and he's still under 4.5 every single time, under 4.48 every single time. It was just ridiculous, with messing up. Most people can't do that. But, just a different weapon for them, a guy that, can get over the top. Don't expect him to make too big of an impact right away, but 5th, 6th round pick is probably about where he should have gone anyway, so I did give that pick a B as well. DeMar Hamlin out of Pitt. Some people really like him, some people don't. I'm kind of more in the side that I do like him. I think they could have used some depth at that safety position with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde getting up there in age. So, a guy that you can bring in, develop, rotational piece, if nothing else. So definitely a good value there in the 6th round. I did give that pick an A, end of the 6th round. A guy that I probably would have drafted, 4th, 5th round. So pretty good value there overall. Then they went with Rashad Wildgoose out of Wisconsin. Kind of a guy that, interesting story at Wisconsin. He played odd packages. He's probably going to profile more as a nickel type player in the NFL level. Kind of a guy that you have to develop for a while, but somebody that could really turn into something as well. So I gave that pick a B. And then last but not least, they took Jack Anderson, a guard out of Texas Tech. Wasn't really impressed with him at the Senior Bowl or too much that I've seen in the past. I know some people kind of like him. It's weird. I just haven't seen it on tape myself. I don't see anything special there, so 7th round pick. I gave that pick a C. It kind of fit a need, but they already drafted 2 offensive linemen earlier in the draft. I think there's probably a couple other better options that you could have gone with that 7th round pick, but, it's a 7th round pick regardless. But with that being said, I gave the Buffalo Bills an A- overall. I think they had a pretty solid draft. They filled in that pass rush need. They brought in some other guys that they can kind of try to develop and bring up as this team gets older as well. It's definitely a solid draft for them overall. It wasn't quite an A, but A- definitely for sure. Then we'll move over to the New England Patriots, and obviously the Patriots had quite an interesting draft. And as most of you probably already know if you're watching this video, Mac Jones was 15th overall to the Patriots. Mac Jones is a quarterback I liked a lot in this process. I think he's a good scheme fit for the Patriots, kind of He's never going to be Tom Brady, so don't even put that out there. But, just that really smart, intelligent quarterback, plays within the system. And he's going to do pretty well. I compare him kind of, like a Kirk Cousins, a Phillip Rivers, somebody like that. He can move around in the pocket. He can make good, smart throws. He's accurate with the football, and he's going to be a great fit for their team. Whether or not he plays year one is a different story, but we'll just have to see, and I think it's a good fit for them overall and for Mac Jones himself. So that pick was an A. And then we moved down to Christian Barmore in the second round. They actually traded up for him for defensive tackle. They struggled against the run some last year, and part of it was due to the defensive line. And then another part of it was, due to Dante Hightower, the leader of their defense, not playing last year. But Christian Barmore coming in, going to help out that defensive line quite a bit. Very talented guy. Thought he'd go in the first round. He fell down in the second round. I did give this pick an A because it was a clear area of need and a very, very talented player. Then towards the end of the third round, they ended up with Ronnie Perkins, defensive end out of Oklahoma. Not the greatest scheme fit for them. They might try him at outside linebacker doing that, but we'll see how it works out. I gave this pick a B just because it was a good value pick, even though it's not quite the best scheme fit. Then for Ramondre Stevenson in the fourth round out of Oklahoma as well, running back, adding another piece to their running back room. A little bit bigger back, but doesn't run with a lot of physicality. I thought he'd be a fourth, fifth round pick. I think it's an area of need, so I did give this pick a B, even though I'm not crazy about Ramondre Stevenson myself. Then we get down to the end of the fifth round. They went with Cam McGrone out of Michigan. This is a linebacker a lot of people like, coming off, I believe it was a torn Achilles, so he didn't play this year, didn't do much of anything at his pro day, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And it seems like the Patriots like Michigan linebackers. They always end up with one or two, it seems like, on their team at any given point in time. I think he's a very athletic guy, a guy that you can kind of develop for a while. Hopefully he doesn't have to play right away, but, kind of get healthy. Maybe he's that replacement for Hightower once he decides to retire. So definitely not a bad pick in the fifth round by any means, so I did give that an A. And then in the sixth round, they took Joshua Bledsoe out of Missouri. I'll say this right now, I don't know too much about him overall. He seemed like a decent prospect. This is probably about the range that I would go for him, so I gave this pick a B. It's the Patriots always like to have three safeties that they can use at any point in time. Maybe he becomes one of them. Otherwise, he's just a good special teamer and rotational type player at some point in time. Then in the sixth round, they went with William Sherman, offensive tackle out of Colorado. Obviously, the Patriots have done very, very well, especially with late round offensive linemen. So Sherman was a guy that was lower on my board, probably, 6th, 7th round pick, so I don't knock this one at all. I gave it a C. There might have been a couple other guys that would have taken ahead of him, but, it's the Patriots, and they've done pretty well in that department, so can't really knock them there. And then last but not least, they went with Trey Nixon out of Central Florida. A little bit of a deep threat at the wide receiver position. They've definitely tried to add speed this offseason, especially at the receiving position, whether it was wide receiver or tight end. So he definitely fits in the mold of what they're trying to do there. Might be able to play some special teams. Maybe takes over that Matthew Slater gunner role as well once he finally decides to retire. But, an interesting prospect. Hopefully you can turn him into something. But 7th round pick nonetheless. I did give that pick a B. And then overall for the Patriots, I gave this draft a B+. I think they really filled a lot of needs, whether it was quarterback, defensive tackle, just some other depth pieces that really are going to help their team in the long run. So pretty solid draft overall for the Patriots. Then we move over to the New York Jets, and I think they had a pretty good draft overall, but we'll get into it. And Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, quarterback out of BYU. If you guys have watched my channel for a little while now, I am very high on Zach Wilson. I think he's going to be, if not the best quarterback out of this class. Him and Trevor Lawrence tied in the way I grade out prospects. So Zach Wilson, talent is to the moon. Hopefully the Jets don't screw him up. They do have some pretty good coaches there now, so hopefully there's a little bit of changing in that Jets culture overall. And with that being said, I did give that pick an A, so pretty simple pick there, especially number 2 overall. Elijah Vera-Tucker out of USC, this is a prospect that I did like a lot. They have him listed as guard. I think he could play offensive tackle at the NFL level too if he needed to do so, or just fill in there at some point in time. But, really solidifying that offensive line around your young quarterback is something you want to do. And with that being said, I did give that pick an A. Probably could knock him down a little bit just because they traded up to go and get him, and they probably could have stayed put and gotten a different offensive lineman, but Vera-Tucker is still one of those offensive linemen that I really did like in this year's class. Then at the beginning of the second round, they went with Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, wide receiver. So my problem with this pick is they already have Jamison Crowder. Yes, I know he's probably going to be a cap casualty, but they haven't cut him as of today. So Elijah Moore is slightly better than Jamison Crowder maybe, but it's just I don't know what they're going to do with him right now. Is Crowder going to be around for this year still? So that's my problem with this pick. I don't hate Elijah Moore, the prospect. I think they could have gone somewhere else here and had some more value. I did give the pick a B overall because you're still supporting your young quarterback. Then in the 4th round, we have Michael Carter out of North Carolina, running back. My number 5 running back on the board. Thought he'd probably go in like round 3. Ended up going in the beginning of round 4, so not too big a difference there. But I gave that pick an A because it was really a position in need, and it is a pretty good prospect that should fit their scheme very well as well. Then the 5th round, they went with Jamin Sherwood out of Auburn. A guy that really didn't test very good at his pro day. He's probably going to have to transition to linebacker at the NFL level. So we'll have to see how that turns out. I did give that pick a D. I thought it was a reach. I thought maybe it was a 6th, 7th round pick. Probably better off suited as a linebacker. In the 5th round, oddly enough, they went with the other Michael Carter out of Duke. He is the defensive back. They have him listed as safety here. Played some corner. I think he's a versatile weapon that they can kind of use in that defensive backs, and they really need some defensive backs there. But in the 5th round, it might have been a little bit of a reach for him as well, but I'll give it a C just because it really was a position of need. Then in the end of the 5th round, they went with Jason Pinnock out of Pitt, and he's a cornerback. Not a guy that really got me too excited. His pro day numbers weren't the best. Guy that maybe was a fringe guy to get drafted, and they took him in the 5th round, so I gave this pick a D. I just didn't think it was that good a value there. And then in the 6th round, in the beginning, they took Hamza Nazardine out of Florida State. I probably butchered his name, but he is a safety. He's probably another guy that could transition to linebacker at the NFL level. We'll see how they end up using him. 6th round, I think, was pretty good value for him overall. Maybe a position in need, just depending on where they play him, but I think he's probably going to be another guy that ends up sticking at linebacker rather than safety, but we'll just have to see. Probably a guy that I would took in like the 5th round, so in the beginning of the 6th round, pretty good value there, so that was a B pick overall. And then they went with Brandon Eccles out of Kentucky. Don't know a lot about him. Probably a guy that was kind of fringe guy to get drafted as well. I gave that pick a C. I think some of the corners that they did end up taking, I just wasn't the biggest fans of them, so we'll see how they pan out for their team going forward. And then they took Jonathan Marshall out of Arkansas, defensive tackle. I think that was a pretty good scheme fit for them overall. They don't really need him to play right away, but hopefully he develops into like a rotational player along that defensive line. So I did give that pick a B. And then for the overall grade for the Jets, I gave him a B overall. It was a pretty solid draft outside of the Sherwood pick and the Pinnock pick. I think those are both pretty big reaches. I think those guys are probably both 7th round picks, and they got to end up getting taken in the 5th round. So, and they're guys where one of them is probably going to transition to linebacker. One of them, I'm not sure what he's going to be able to do at corner at the NFL level. So we'll just have to see how their careers play out. Hopefully it works out the best for them. I'm not trying to knock anybody down by any means. And then we'll get moved over to the Miami Dolphins, which is the last one for the AFC East teams. And I'll say they had an interesting draft. They took Jalen Waddle 6th overall, reuniting him with Tua and their former college teammates. They're really trying to go for that speed dynamic on offense, looking for guys that are able to get open and separate Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. Because, Tua struggled throwing with anticipation last year. It was pretty obvious for most people to see. Hopefully it gets better. Hopefully he's able to read defenses a little bit better and just kind of open up this offense a little bit more. If you guys have watched my channel before, I'm not a big fan of Tua in general, but, reuniting him with one of his former college teammates, a guy that can get open, give him some success, that's definitely a win in my book. I did end up giving the pick a B just because I feel like there was better options on the board. I probably would have went Devonta Smith instead. I think he's just the better overall player, and you guys can debate that all you want down in the comments if we want to do that as well. Then with the 18th pick in the draft, they went with Jalen Phillips, defensive end out of Miami. Not sure exactly how he fits in this scheme. I think they're probably going to have to play him at 3-4 outside linebacker. I think he is more well-suited to be a 4-3 defensive end, but I don't think he can play 3-4 DN. So be interesting to see how his career develops there. I did give the pick an A just because a lot of people, thought he'd be going a little bit higher. If he didn't have the injury history that he had, he'd be like a top 10 pick in this draft. Then at the beginning of the 2nd round, they went with Javon Holland out of Oregon, safety. Definitely an area in need. Might not have been the best choice here safety-wise, but a guy that's kind of versatile. He'll really fit their scheme, so I can't really blame them too much there. I gave that pick a B. Then with their other 2nd round pick, they went with Leon Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. He's a guy that's a really safe pick, Probably a guy that might profile better at guard, but I think they're going to end up playing him at right tackle. We'll see how that all pans out as like training camp goes on. We'll see what it looks like at the beginning of the year. But, a guy that's very well versed in pass blocking, especially playing at Notre Dame where he's been really well coached up. And so I did give that pick a B as well. Then in the third round, they went with Hunter Long, tight end out of Boston College. Probably the most well-balanced tight end in this year's class in terms of being able to block, pass catch, and everything like that. Kind of like a little bit of Kyle Rudolph mold. I know they got Mike Gesicki, but he's more of a slot tight end at this point in time. And he's on the last year of his contract. He's probably going to be gone after next year. I don't hate this pick by any means. I think it's really planning for the future, addressing a position that's going to be a position of need, and getting a 3-down tight end instead of one that's more useful in the slot when you just added a slot player and Jalen Waddle. So I gave that pick a B as well. Then they just had 7th-round picks after that. They took Larnell Coleman out of UMass. Don't know a lot about him. Some people were kind of like him, but wasn't really on my board. I thought he'd be an undrafted free agent. So I gave that pick a C. Kind of addresses a position need, just building up offensive line depth, but we'll just have to see more of a project offensive lineman, see what he turns into. Then last but not least, they had Jared Dokes out of Cincinnati, running back. On tape, he didn't really do much for me. There's a lot of people out there in the Twitter community that were excited for Jared Dokes now just because he was a 7th-round pick. He went to Miami. There's kind of an open door there at the running back position, but I don't think if they were going to address the running back position, he's the guy to really do it. More of a depth piece, kind of see what he can do when he gets in there. Kind of a guy that had some injury issues when he was in college as well, too. So I'll be interested to see what his career looks like when he's all said and done. But with that being said, I did give the Dolphins a B overall as well. So pretty solid draft for them overall. Filled some positions in need. Kind of took some shots on some other guys. Not a bad draft by any means. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for the AFC East draft grades. And, it's pretty solid. All these teams, in the AFC East got a grade of a B or above. So all these teams made progress. They got better in one way or another. And it's going to be a very interesting, very competitive division for the next couple of years. Obviously, the Bills are kind of the favorite now that Josh Allen really took that step up. But, you got some other young quarterbacks that are coming in now. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. You already got Tua with the Dolphins. So it's going to be a very young quarterback group and hopefully a great division for years to come. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Really would appreciate it. Definitely, it really helps to let me know that you guys are enjoying these videos. With that being said, if you guys are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. It really helps build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And that's truly one for you, the viewers. Helping you guys with your DFS, whether it's NBA or NFL. Helping you guys with your fantasy football teams. Talking all the different football news this offseason, especially these NFL draft grades that I'm getting out kind of day by day now as I can do so. So the next one coming out will be the AFC West tomorrow. Definitely be sure to check that one out as well. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. And last but not least, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.